This is The Comms Exchange, a podcast by 3090 Marketing. Each episode, we sit down with colleagues, leaders, and changemakers to share stories and lessons from the field of community and economic development. Together, we explore how communications shapes strategy, builds trust, and drives momentum because every project, every partnership, every breakthrough begins the same way, with a conversation.
Welcome back to the Comms Exchange, where we explore the ideas and the people shaping how we build, connect, and communicate. I'm Christianne Brunini.
And I'm Rachel Ledet, and today we're talking about what happens when history, design, and imagination collide right here in New Orleans.
Our guest today, Mimi Spiehler, is a developer, designer, and visionary behind the Josephine, a 1925 Spanish Colonial Revival church that she and her brother, David Fuselier, have transformed into an immersive cultural venue on Napoleon and Ferret.
If you've seen any of the headlines, it's been all over City Business Magazine, or if you've driven past that corner, you know that this project has been turning heads. The church that used to be known as Our Lady of Lourdes is now the Josephine, which is an 11,000 square foot space that combines historic renovation with a digital projection mapping that's very different from really anything we've seen in New Orleans. And it goes across the ceiling and the altar's dome. And so we're really seeing this preservation meets innovation and something that's really new in New Orleans.
Mimi partnered with the Brennan family to operate and book the venue, and she's redefining what sacred space can mean for a modern city. From yoga and farmers markets, the Josephine will be a home for community gatherings and creative experiences.
We will talk with Mimi today about how this 2.5 year project came together, what it means to lead as a woman in construction and in real estate development, and how she is breathing new life into the city's architectural legacy without losing sight of a building's soul.
Let's jump in.
Mimi, welcome to the Comms Exchange. I have to start with this. When you first walked into that old church on Napoleon and Ferret, what did you see that others didn't?
Gosh, I don't even know if I can take full credit for it because actually my brother went to see it first. And when he brought me in, it was pretty much caving in on itself. I think we always kind of envisioned it being an event space just because it's so big and open, and we felt like Uptown New Orleans is really lacking. There are lovely venues uptown, but there's not a spot where you can host as many people in one big open space. So it just kind of lended itself to that use.
And what inspired the name, the Josephine?
So to give credit to everybody, we kind of sat at a round table. My brother and the Brennans, and our other two business partners, Doug Cloninger and Chris Prasad, and we kind of did a brainstorm where everybody came and showed up with their five best names. And it's really a play off of the fact that the church is on Napoleon Avenue, and Napoleon and Josephine kind of had this like incredible love story, and it was a nod to them.
I love that.
This project took more than 2 years of demo and construction. That is a really large commitment. And we'd love to know, Mimi, what were some of the defining moments, either breakthroughs or challenges that shaped how the process of this building came back into life?
So initially, it was just my brother and our other two business partners. And so we took out a loan to get the stuff we knew needed to be done. The roof had to completely be taken apart. We hired this amazing roofer who took all the clay tiles down and restored everything and put it back together for us. And the foundation was really sinking in on itself. So we had to start with the perimeter of the building. We lifted the building, we put piles underneath the perimeter. Davy Shoring did that for us because there were some walls that were literally like caving in on itself. And from there, we had to then take the entire floor out because the floor was just sinking. So we demoed the whole floor and it was down to a dirt floor. And then Davies came in and they did those little like screw piles underneath the entire floor. And then we were able to then pour a slab and come back with the terrazzo on top of that. So we really started with some of the bigger things, and then we set out to find a partner, an operational partner. And while we were doing that, we were doing kind of like the bones of the project behind the scenes.
What was it like to sort of court a partner in this? And maybe talk to us a little bit about the pitch and then kind of what was your gut instinct that this was going to work?
So my brother and I definitely have a stomach for taking a risk. So that first and foremost, you just kind of have to jump off the cliff and believe in yourself and just know it's going to work out. We are really, there's days where I don't believe in us. And then there's days where my brother doesn't believe in us and we have to like, talk each other off the ledge. I have this little saying on my makeup table mirror and it says, everything's going to be okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end. And I,
Mm,
I really have to, sometimes it's the screensaver on my phone on the hard days.
I
So
love that.
it's, it's definitely, I think just being an entrepreneur in general, it's not for the faint of heart. I mean, it has its challenges and then it has its positives. My brother and I are both like neurodivergent individuals who just don't fit into corporate America boxes. And so, this works for us, but there are definitely a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of arguments. We're family. So we've also got like the family dynamic that comes into play. But at the end of the day, like we really have each other's back and we make a great team because things that he's great at, I am not so great at, and things that I'm great at, he's not so great at. So we really do make a good team.
We can empathize with that. We just recently went through some big picture visioning and we're jumping off a few cliffs ourselves right now. So when you were working through this plan, you actually implemented some new concepts. You almost created a mini sphere in New Orleans, the digital mapping and the acoustics. What Talk to me about how that came about and how that became core to your concept.
So that actually came about after we partnered with the Brennans. So when we knew we were going to turn it into an event space, we reached out to a few different groups and the Brennans just it was kind of once they showed interest, we knew that they were going to be our partner because they have such a great reputation. They know what they're doing. They have all the infrastructure built in, the employees, the vision, the food. I didn't realize they have like such a huge catering presence in the city. They have a whole commissary kitchen and they do a lot of catering just, you know, bringing catering to people. So it really was a perfect fit, and they throw a lot of high-end weddings, and actually, Taylor Lorio, who is one of their employees, it was his idea. I think Brennan from Elysian Lighting, who did the projection mapping for us, I believe, like, he will come and do just, like, one-off events for people where the projection is not permanently there. And I feel like Taylor saw some of his stuff and was like, okay, with this dome, it could be really cool. And coming off of the Super Bowl and seeing what they were able to do with the cathedral, it was like, wow, this is like a huge opportunity to do something really different. And so I got to give Taylor credit because it was his idea and it really it just stepped the space up in a way that I don't think any of us really were thinking about.
When you and I spoke a few months ago, Mimi, when you were sort of in the thick of trying to get this project finished, you mentioned to me that having a community place to gather was also important to you. And I think that that's interesting because you're describing a high end event experience and working with the Brennans, and their infrastructure is getting you there, which is such a great idea to pull in someone who has the experience that maybe you don't have. You had this building, they had a path. It's such a beautiful marriage. But then In opposite, maybe you also want it to be very approachable and very in the daytime hours, a community launch pad to do things. Can you talk a little bit about the importance that you're placing on what you'd like the community to be able to use this building for?
Sure. Well, in that eh, that was really like a joint theme with us and the Brennans. So, Dickie and Lauren Brennan, their partner, Steve Pettis, he's a very religious guy and very big in the Catholic Church. And, he describes a church as like a place of gathering. Like it brings, this place used to bring the community together before it was empty. And David and I felt very strongly about that as well. So, we don't want it to sit dormant where like you just have to have a big checkbook in order to enter the space, enjoy the space. So, we kind of all were spitballing ideas about how do we make this more of like an approachable community space. And we are talking to a couple of yoga teachers about, you know, doing some community yoga classes during the week when we're kind of slow and it's not really open anyway. And then we met with the Philharmonic Orchestra about they do these little mini concert series about doing a concert series in the Josephine. And just opening it up to the arts. So a good friend of mine, Liz Newcomer, she has Crescent City Stage. They are going to do they're a community theater. So they are going to do a reading of a Christmas Carol. And so we're going to jack up the space with the projection mapping, like kind of Christmas theme, things like that, to where we can give back as well as provide a place uptown that you can have these big weddings, Deb parties. Rex will be there on Mardi Gras Day. They're going to toast the Queen, things like that. So we don't want to be just this like behemoth of a building that's shuttered unless, there's a big fancy event going on.
Certainly in New Orleans, the architecture coming from the historic churches is a really important, not only architectural element addition to our city, but also to these gathering spaces, as you mentioned. So I love this sort of like daytime community event experience that you're going to be offering, as well as some really formal special affairs that are a little bit more dressed up and buttoned up, and look forward to coming to see something very soon in your space. So we will have to schedule that here
Yeah.
in the next few weeks.
Yeah, since COVID, that third space, that gathering space concept has really kind of lost its rhythm. And so whether you're in New Orleans or in any city across the country, creating new ways to gather and connect in a community is so important. So thank you for that. But interestingly, you are a woman who is putting together this project, and this is a very male-dominated space. So talk to me a little bit about being a woman in construction and leading a project of this size and scale, and pulling together partners, and how that has worked for you.
It's definitely a challenge. And especially being a mom, I have three small kids and it y- you know I went to school for construction management. So I think I was one of like three women in my class. And you sort of get used to being in a boys' club. My father built houses. So I was used to being on a job site and used to being, in that arena. But I think, the biggest part of it is just having confidence in yourself. I think just in societal gender roles, women are typically told to, smile more, get along, don't make waves. And the older I've gotten and the more experience that I have and the more confidence that I have in my knowledge about things, you learn how to hold yourself in a room full of men. And I mean, we all love men and everything, but like a lot of times we don't trust ourselves to know what the best thing to do is. And we see things that maybe they don't. We pay attention to the details and we're typically really good communicators. So I think like being a woman, you just have to like know who you are and confident in who you are. But it can be intimidating at times, and there are men who don't love hearing certain things from, a women's perspective, especially when, you know, it can get contentious and that can be challenging. I've been in this business for, 18, 19 years now, and I think that, my advice to any woman who wants to get into the construction industry is, just go for it. I mean, it is a very challenging space, but it's also a very rewarding space. You get to sit back and look at what you created at the end of the day. And so that really makes it worth it to me. And there's always people there along the way that will, explain things to you if you don't understand them, and you'll find the people who, are willing to help you and give you the knowledge that you don't have. And everybody has to start somewhere. So, you learn something on every project, on every mistake that you make. There's always like a lesson to be learned, and then you just continue to grow. And then before you know it, I went from painting bathrooms myself in my 20s to now we're doing, these incredible historic renovations. If you would have told me then with my little laser pointer trying to like paint stripes on, a restaurant bathroom that this is where I would end up, I would have never believed you. So you just have to start somewhere, and it will continue to grow, and you'll land where you want to be.
That's great advice, Mimi, and sometimes just getting your hands a little dirty and getting started is just the way to start. So, I love that. I love the motto that you said earlier about how, if it's not great yet, it's not the end, and just having a little bit of confidence to take the next step is such an important message. So, thank you for sharing that. Our last question, when you walk into the Josephine, what does it leave you with, and what does it inspire for you in your next steps or in your next projects?
Just asking me that question, I got chills. I hadn't really seen it in all of its glory. We had a first look party for vendors in the industry, in the wedding industry, and walking in there and hearing the music and seeing the projection mapping and seeing people, just enjoying the space, and oh, my grandparents got married here, or my parents got married here, whatever it was, or I used to come to mass here, and seeing the community be excited about it getting brought back to life. It's just it's the reason that I think I do it, because during the process, I'm like, "Why do we do this? This is, why?" Every day you wake up and there's, like, another headache, there's another fire you need to put out, like, surprise, you've gotta take the whole dome down and redo it from scratch unexpectedly. But just seeing people in the space, enjoying the space, it just it really it it makes you feel like you're giving back in a way, and bringing life back into a building that has been sitting there since Katrina. I mean, it really is. It's a very rewarding feeling for sure.
Do you have a plan to take some rest time, or do you have something that you're looking for as your next big passion project?
So we next up is a hotel that we have been trying to get developed since I was pregnant with my first son. So he turned 10 in September. We are finally on the cusp of moving forward with that one. It's on the riverfront right by the Rusty Rainbow Bridge. So that is going to be our next big push. So a little downtime, but not a lot.
Doesn't sound like it, and we would love to talk to you a little bit more about that project because that sounds really interesting, and you're sort of in this tourism hospitality path a little bit, and I think that's a whole whole 'nother podcast episode that I'm just really interested in learning more about. But we will pause now just for the sake of time and for your time today. And as a busy working mom and entrepreneur and construction company owner and developer, we can't thank you enough for coming on and giving us some of your time, some of your insights, and just really are appreciative that you are able to be here with us today on the Comms Exchange. So thank you, Mimi.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Best of luck on the new project. We look
I
forward to
know.
that.
Definitely. If our viewers, listeners want to find out more about the Josephine or your business, where should they look online to find you?
We are pearlconstruction.com on the internet, and then Pearl Construction on Instagram, and the Josephine Nola on Instagram as well. And the Brennans will take great care of you if you're looking to host an event there.
That sounds great. We have to think of something that we want to throw a party for, Christiane, so we can call Mimi and the Brennans.
I
Thank you
am
so
already
much.
percolating.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mimi. And we hope to see you very soon.
Thank you so much, ladies. It was so nice talking to y'all.
Thanks for listening to The Comms Exchange, a podcast by 3090 Marketing. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please be sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss out on an exciting new episode. We'll be back soon with more stories and strategies from the field, because every breakthrough begins with a conversation.